Well, hello again, everybody, with my good friend Steve the Homer True. I'm Tom Pippins. Behind the camera is Brent Young, another good pal. Welcome to another edition of My Faith with Homer and Pip. And today we greet you from the St. Francis de Sales Seminary. Privileged to be here and honored to have as our guest Kevin Durand. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you.
And as always, Homer leads us off.
We always love doing My Faith. We haven't had, I think, anybody who wants to be a minister or wants to be a priest. So I'm looking forward. Take it away from where you want to start.
Awesome. Thanks, Homer. So yeah, we were talking just a little bit before we got on the camera how I think one of the biggest things for me in my faith where it is today and something that's made it be a long-lasting thing for me is the fact that when I was a kid, we used to pray the family rosary together. So growing up Catholic, I think many families do this, or many Catholics are familiar with what that is. But there are, typically speaking, 5 decades that you do as you pray the rosary, and so that presents an opportunity kind of in between those periods of prayer to, for my family, ask questions about the faith. So ever since I was a little kid, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, I was able to actually kind of ask some questions about, like, did the dinosaurs roam the earth at the same time as Adam and Eve? Or, like, things that kids wonder as they're reading the Bible.
How many brothers and sisters?
I have 5 that are younger.
My question would have been, do I have to do this every Sunday night? Come on.
Yeah.
What was the strength?
Yeah.
There had to be somebody had to battle it a little bit.
Oh, no doubt about it. Yeah, I mean, there were definitely a few of us, myself included, at certain times that it was absolutely the last thing we wanted to do. I mean, if there was... there's typically more things that are exciting than praying together. But there's something about praying together as a family that I think is actually really powerful. There's some kind of palpable sense of community and love that's really there when you're able to do that. But certainly, I remember, it was always a battle for my parents to kind of keep wrangling us back into where we were. And it's not like we were kneeling down the whole time or anything. We were kind of lounging a little bit, but it was still, I think, really powerful for me.
But at some point,
yeah,
for you, it touched you because you bring that up as the first thing.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Yeah, I think, well, one thing I heard this summer that was really big for me, I spent the summer up at Catholic Youth Expeditions up in Door County, Wisconsin, and there's a new religious community of sisters that are up there, and they're very young, which is very cool too, to see. It's something you don't often see as kind of younger religious. But the Mother Superior there, Mother Mary Catherine, said that praying the rosary and kind of holding on to the rosary as you do is kind of like holding Our Lady's hand. And I thought that was so big, and I think that actually kind of is what I had felt throughout. It was a big comfort for me to do that throughout, especially during tougher times and things like that. As you go through, that was kind of always a constant for me to do that. But then I think what makes it more profound as you get a little bit older is when you're praying the rosary, what you're doing is you're meditating on the very life of Jesus. And, that's the person that we want to imitate. That's who we want to come and dwell in us, and we want to take on his heart. And, in addition to obviously reading the scriptures and reading the Bible and receiving the sacraments and things like that, it's an awesome way to get to know him, I think, better, and to know his life and to know his family and the people that he cared about and the way that he would interact. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it sustained as well, yeah.
I always feel like I'm the negative guy, like what's wrong? But at what age? So we see this transfer. So at what age did you think I might be a priest, or I don't? This is a process that's different.
It is a process
for the rest of us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would say when I was 21, that's when I thought. Well, that's when I remember actually kind of being invited very explicitly by the Lord to consider being a priest, and I did not want to do that at all at that period in my life.
How did he touch you?
So it had been something that was kind of on my heart for a little bit of time, but every time it would come up, I would kind of reject it and think of, well, what am I giving up by being a priest? Obviously, in the Western Church, we're celibate, and that's a huge thing to give up. And but during this period of time, I went to the Adoration Chapel at campus where I went to school, Ave Maria University in Florida, And I went with another guy who is in my fraternity, and we went after we said night prayer. It's a different kind of fraternity than you would expect at most schools, but
that's
that
the Domino's Pizza guy, right?
It's the
Who
Domino's
created
Pizza. Yeah, Tom Monahan.
Yes.
Exactly. Yep. So he's a really good man, and he founded this university in Ann Arbor, Michigan at first, and then moved it down to Fort Myers area in Florida. But when I was in adoration, this was kind of on my heart. I was dating somebody at the time. I was about to graduate. And I heard very clearly, "Be my priest." And, that was a pretty intimidating thing at that point.
You heard it how? I mean, I asked this because people are, at some point you either think I heard it or I'm crazy.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's one of those two things, right? So there's something called discernment of spirits that you want to practice regularly, because obviously it's not the same as you telling me what I just said. I don't audibly hear it. But you think about, well, was that coming from me? Like, did I say that? Well, it wasn't coming from me, because I did not want to do that. Was it coming from, the evil one? Was it coming from like an evil spirit? Well, no, I don't think he would want me to be a priest either. So who must it have been coming from? Well, the Lord. And then through, spiritual direction and all these sorts of things, you're able to kind of figure that out. And I've heard actually those exact words a couple of times throughout my formation now. And so that's kind of led me to more strongly kind of be and commit to the Lord in this way. So that I think is what started it off. And then it wasn't until I was really 25 that I said, okay, Lord, I think I'm ready to follow your path and be done kind of trying to follow my own path.
And what happened to get to that level? Because that's 4 years later?
4 years later, yeah. So in the interim, my family, pretty much my mom and dad, my aunts and uncles, everybody got married when they were 21, 22, 23, and had a lot of kids and were pretty successful in all this. And I thought, boy, that seems pretty great. That's really kind of what I want to do, and raise my kids in the faith and all this. And so I kind of was setting myself up where I had an opportunity similar to that. I was majoring in business, and I had a job lined up already after school. I was dating a girl who was wonderful, and I thought, well, this is someone that could be my wife. And so during that period of time, I had to kind of keep really actively removing this thought and this invitation that the Lord was inviting me to over and over. And at a certain point, that got to be really exhausting. And I kind of knew what was going on here. And so I said, boy, this is not the type of peace I should have when I'm about to make this big life decision. And so me and that woman went our separate ways because I really needed to kind of discern this more sincerely. And
may I ask you, first of all, your wonderful Aunt Kathy told me she's a beautiful lady.
Oh, absolutely.
And how did that go down? And was she just blown away by this? And how difficult was it for you when you felt like you were ready to let go, but now look what you're letting go of?
Right.
For this calling.
Right. Yeah, it was very difficult, I think, for both of us, for sure. Just because, you naturally speaking, your heart is, you're in love. And so it certainly was difficult. And I remember telling her, before, hey, I'm wondering if this is what I'm called to do, is to be a priest. And I had talked to several people kind of about it in passing that way. But then it got to be this kind of more serious point where it had to be. So I think it was difficult, but I think at a certain point, obviously you're able to move along and understand, wow, this is a calling that the Lord wants, and so if that's what the Lord wants, that's what I want as well. So yeah. I think that's how it was able to happen. But certainly, not an easy experience, and an experience that there's 50 seminarians here at St. Francis, and a lot of them had a similar experience in that way too.
Did you ever look back even for a moment, or right toward the goal, right toward the cross?
Yeah, I think one thing I've realized in the seminary and just in the Christian life is how vital prayer is, because we can't see God, right? But you can see other things around you all the time. And so, yeah, there are moments where you kind of are unsure or whatever, but if you reflect on that, oftentimes it's when you're a little bit further from God than you should be. And so when I'm praying, when I'm in that communion with the Lord, it's a peace that's really profound, and that's awesome. And so it's to the cross, and it's the happiness and the joy that you experience in knowing Him, and pursuing His really high call of being a priest. But certainly, yeah, I mean, I think we're all human, and there's a certain sense in which you can be distracted, but you want to kind of make sure that you're making decisions as you're in that relationship with the Lord. Yeah.
Do you have a regular pattern of prayer each day?
Yeah, so I've this is my second year in the seminary. So my first year was kind of getting in the habit of developing a really strong prayer life on my own. But this year I'm starting a holy hour at 5:45 in the morning, and then that leads into Mass at 7 o'clock. And then one thing I'm trying to do for Lent, this is the second day of Lent, Ash Wednesday was yesterday as we're recording this, is doing also a daily examen, which is different than an examination of conscience that you would do before confession. The examen is just you walk through your day and say, well, where was God present in my life today? And how did I react to His invitation to be charitable in this situation that it was difficult to be charitable in, or this, that, or the other thing. And so that I think is going to be a really good kind of practice for me to engage in. But the holy hour is something regular that I do, and then also for all of the priests in the whole world and the religious sisters and so forth, they do something called the Liturgy of the Hours, and so that's praying about 5 different times a day, and so that's something I'm doing as well, which is good. Yeah.
I'm assuming that the rosary will always be a huge part.
Yeah.
Of what you do, what you say to others.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, yeah, I mean, so like God is all powerful, and He has, I think sometimes it's tempting to think, well, let's say we have like all 5 of us are in the chapel at one time. You're almost like, it feels like God must have His attention divided somehow. But that's, of course not the case. He's all powerful. He can do all things, and His relationship with each one of us is absolutely unique. And watching kind of a couple of the other episodes too, I know that's something you guys talk about a lot. Is like, for some people it's this that does it. For some people it's this. And I think God, He's made each one of our hearts very uniquely. And so for me, this has touched my heart in a big way. And so yeah, it'll be definitely something that I'll share as much as I can.
I like to ask priests this question because I think it's so hard.
Yeah.
There are so many things you discipline, and they always say, no, it isn't that hard. It's like, wouldn't you, it's like you doing a basketball game. Do you like that, right? Well, think of it that way, and would you agree?
Oh, wow, that's interesting. To a certain extent, absolutely. Because you realize like how much of like the life of a priest, which I'm not yet, but hopefully one day, is total gift. I mean, like, often and before I joined the seminary, I would always think of, well, what is it that I'm giving up? And I think a lot of people might think that as well. But then you do realize, wow, like you're actually being given a great gift in celibacy and in, kind of like giving up your working career and all of this sort of thing. But I wouldn't say that it's like as easy as doing a basketball game, for example. I would say that it takes you clinging to the cross for sure. But God chooses, I think, certain people who can do that and who find absolute joy in that life, for sure. But it doesn't mean it's like always super easy. Yeah.
What have you learned from other seminarians?
Yeah. Well, that we're all very different. We all have very different interests, but we all have a personal relationship with the Lord and also with the Blessed Virgin Mary, I think. She is really huge for seminarians and priests because you kind of need that kind of feminine influence in your life, and that's what she is. I mean, that's what she was for the Lord. That's what she was for everybody, really, after she was given to John, the beloved disciple, to be all of our mother. So I think I've learned the importance of prayer from the other guys. I've learned that their holiness looks like a lot of different things. It doesn't look like, I don't know, maybe what you would think like the normal priest would look like, but having that relationship and that foundation is really, really crucial, I think, is what I've learned.
And what have you learned from the priests? The people have been doing this for various number of years, some a few and some many.
Yeah, well, I think the same thing, and even more so from them, about the importance of prayer. And how how, yeah, the more, I mean, there's a line that John Paul II had that, the only way we can really find ourselves is through a sincere gift of ourselves. And they show us that every day. I mean, they are, we have Father Luke here, and he's going and going and going every single day. Same with Father Brad down the hall, our rector, Father John. And you see the only way that they're doing that is through kind of drinking deeply and being in love, really, with the Lord and with the church. And so that's the thing I think I've learned from the priest is like that this process, being a priest, is all about like falling in love, because we're made for that. And the only way that we can really like show and give the love of Christ to the people that we're shepherding as pastors and as priests is to actually be receiving that love as well. So it's kind of, you want to be like the St. Francis prayer says, like a channel of his love in that way. So.
I may start it, but I don't finish it.
Yeah,
I got none left. You answered them all,
and I probably don't either. But this is not a very easy time to be a priest.
Right.
I often, as a convert to Catholicism, I always say thank you to our priests. I think they're a great gift. But you're obviously aware of that and the struggles that we have had in Jesus' church. How does that factor in? And Kevin, what do you most look forward to when you do become a priest?
Yeah, great questions. Well, I think it absolutely is a incredibly difficult time in the church, and the church is the body of Christ, and so we're all like united in a real way. And so when the body is injured, as it is from the scandal that we've had, it hurts all of us, and we just have to cling closer to the head, which is Christ, and trust that His will is done through the church, and it is through the church that He wants His light to still shine, and that there are absolutely broken members of His church, and so we need to do everything we can to obviously be there and support in prayer and in every way support the people who've been injured, and even those of the people that haven't been directly injured but who are scandalized. Absolutely. But I'm most looking forward to, in being a priest, I think, exercising the sacraments of the church, but then having like that exclusive relationship with the Lord. Not exclusive, but to have my primary relationship be with God, and have that kind of unique sort of love to have with Him. I think that those are the things that I'm looking forward to. But then also the fraternity that we have amongst our future brother priests, our seminarians here, is really fantastic too. So I think that's something that I've experienced already, but look forward to even more.
Well, I think many will be grateful that you heeded the call of the Lord.
Yeah, thanks.
We'll go into His church. Kevin Durand, it's an honor to be with you. Thanks for sharing your faith story. It really means a lot.
Yeah.
With Steve the Homer True, I'm Tom Pippins. This has been My Faith with Homer and Pip. Hope you'll tune in again.